Donald Trump was sworn in. World Liberty Financial, of course, is the Trump family crypto business. Were you aware of that transaction?
No, sir.
Did you hear anything about it?
I've seen the general reports after the rule change, but I'm not familiar with
it was a front page Wall Street Journal story, and it's been much discussed in this committee and in other committees. So I just want to be clear what's going on here. We have a situation where the career staff have concerns about G42. The president has a $500 million relationship with its chair, and lo and behold, G42 gets access to very sensitive technologies that the career staff at BIS warned could fall into China's hands. I hope that if confirmed, you will really dig into this. That's on top of about a $2 billion investment that the UAE royal family, Sheikh Danoon, made in World Liberty Financial months after the president's inauguration. So you have $500 million before the inauguration, $2 billion later. This stinks. And I hope whoever's in this position will start to clean it up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I recognize Senator Warnock for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Fair Housing Initiatives Program helps. The Fair Housing Initiatives Program helps local governments and nonprofit organizations enforce the nation's fair housing laws. In fact, nearly 3 in 4 fair housing complaints are first heard by these organizations who use federal funds to investigate complaints and conduct education about renters' rights. Mr. Dennis, you're nominated to be the Chief Financial Officer at HUD, but you're basically doing the job right now. So I would imagine that you are aware that HUD recently announced they were making $83 million available under this Fair Housing Initiative. How many of these dollars will go to these experienced nonprofits who help so many Americans with their fair housing complaints?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how those dollars will flow or how much. That's a program decision. Within the office of the Chief Financial Officer, we're responsible for making sure those funds are available, and then they're properly accounted for once they leave HUD and reported.
So you're not aware. So let me tell you that the answer is zero. HUD does not reserve funding for these organizations, and it explicitly disqualified prior recipients from certain funds. So HUD is reserving $0 for these organizations that are actually experienced with addressing these issues around fair housing. They're the first line of defense. They're the ones who see it, and none of them will receive anything. So how is this consistent with the law, which requires funds to be made available to experienced nonprofit fair housing enforcement organizations? That's what the law says.
Yeah, again, they're program decisions, and they're done in consultation with general counsels. But I will assure you that we are following the law. We will not do anything to violate the law.
I assure you that it's not consistent with the law, and that it's bad practice to just disqualify the organizations that are actually experienced with doing this work. And I hope that you will rethink this if confirmed to this position. Mr. Johnson, thank you for meeting with me in my office earlier this week. If confirmed, you will lead the CFPB, a regulator that the Trump administration has decimated. Last week, this committee had Acting Director Russell Vogt before us, and he replied yes when Senator Van Hollen asked if he favored eliminating the CFPB. You're up for the nomination. Same question, yes or no. Do you agree with Mr. Vogt, and do you favor eliminating the CFPB, yes or no?
Senator, I've advocated for legislative restructuring of the agency to ensure that it can better enforce.
Do you agree with
the law?
eliminating it, yes or no?
If confirmed,
the question is eliminating it. Do you think it should be eliminated? Yes or no?
Senator, if confirmed, I'll enforce the law, which includes Title 10 of Dodd-Frank.
You want to answer the question. Last week, Mr. Vogt also noted that the CFPB has imposed, quote, huge costs on the American people since its inception. Yes or no, do you agree with Mr. Vogt that the CFPB, an agency which, by the way, has returned $21 billion to consumers who were harmed, who were defrauded by bad actors. His opinion is that it has imposed, quote, huge costs on Americans. Last question, Mr. Vogt also told us that he believed the CFPB's medical debt rule was illegal. In fact, under his direction, the CFPB never defended the rule in court and instead sided with debt collectors. Let's assume the rule was legal for the sake of argument. Do you think the medical debt rule was a good idea?
Senator, my understanding of the resolution of that case was that the district court judge actually did reach the merits of that case and found that the CFPB exceeded its statutory authority in promulgating that rule.
I'm asking you, do you think it was a good idea or a bad idea to protect millions of Americans from medical debt? I'm asking you a policy question.
Yes, sir. And I appreciated our conversation on this when we met. I do think there are two important policy principles here. One is ensuring the integrity and accuracy of information that's in the credit reporting system itself, and the CFPB's responsibility under FCRA is to ensure that integrity. As I mentioned to you also, I don't want folks to be unfairly punished for, incurring debts that are, something that they didn't anticipate for. If this happened to my family, I would do everything I could to ensure that they are safe. So
I appreciate that perspective. I hope it gets us to a much better place than where we find ourselves. Thanks.
Senator Gallego.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Janice, would you say you're, as a former auditor, you pride yourself on fiscal responsibility in catching waste?
Yes.
Well, let's do some quick tests here. Would you say that $600 million on a barroom, half of which is paid for from American taxpayers, is that a good fiscal decision? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, 600 what?
$600 million on a ballroom, half of which is from American taxpayers. Is that a good fiscal decision? Yes or no?
Oh, I'm not going to get involved in what the White House is doing or opining.
Would you be able to answer this question? As HUD CFO, this is literally the job, stewarding the public money instead of watching it get set on fire. So let's try a much easier one. How about $5 million in taxpayer dollars on gilding statues? Would that be a good decision?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
How about nearly $8 million of taxpayer money to paint the Eisenhower building white? Would that be a good decision on money?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, I haven't gotten to the other $6 trillion this administration is dumping onto the national debt over the next 10 years with the One Big Beautiful Bill, a bill that has ripped health care and SNAP benefits away from many, many Arizonans and millions of Americans, and blowing hundreds of millions of dollars on a ballroom and vanity projects isn't really fiscally responsible whatsoever, while Americans are getting screwed right now. So the reason I ask these questions is people are wondering what's going to happen with this country and this country's budget and their money. So hardworking Arizonans aren't really a slush fund for this administration. They're vanity projects. Mr. Johnson, question, how would you describe your relationship with Russell Vogt?
Well, I came to know Mr. Vogt because we were both former staff members for Jeb Henserling.
So, Mr. Johnson, one CFPB employee facing termination described you and acting CFPB Director Russell Vogt as two peas in a pod. Do you agree with that characterization? Are you and Russell two peas in a pod?
Senator, I'm not Russell Vogt. If confirmed,
I
would make my own decisions.
Can you name one decision made by Acting Director Vogt during his time at the CFPB that you disagree with?
None come to mind at the moment.
For example, one thing I definitely agree is, do you agree with cancellation of the $80 million order against Navy Federal Credit Union? That was money owed to cheated service members and their families.
Senator, I wasn't at the CFPB. I don't know the facts at hand that led to consideration of any enforcement action.
Okay, do you agree with killing the rule that stopped Americans' personal data from being sold without consent was a bad decision?
I'm sorry, to which rule are you referring, Senator?
The rule to stop the personal data from being sold on the open market.
I'm not sure that I understand exactly which rule you're referring to.
Okay, fine. Moving on. We spoke about this earlier. Do you agree with putting medical debt back on Americans' credit reports?
That was a rule that was attempted to be promulgated by the CFPB. It was challenged, and the court determined that the CFPB had exceeded its statutory authority.
So you agree then it was a good decision?
I was just recounting what the court said, which is that the CFPB didn't have the authority to promulgate that rule.
So regardless of that, you would say that you're okay with it then?
Well, Senator Warnock had also questioned me on this, sir, and I understand the real burden that families can face if they're facing medical debts. I think the government should be looking for opportunities to help those folks in that circumstance. I also said that another policy principle at stake is the accuracy and integrity of information in the credit reporting system, and I think it's a question that policymakers should consider.
So moving on to back to the CFPB statute requires, in terms of Office of Older Americans and Office of Serving Members Affairs, among others, these offices serve millions of people. Those offices obviously can't be staffed with a small handful of staffers, especially in the nature of what's going on. Is that correct?
Those are offices that were created by the Dodd-Frank Act, and
right.
the staffing levels are subject to ongoing litigation.
So Dodd-Frank requires an office dedicated to older Americans. It handles financial abuse. We have big retirement communities in Arizona, pension protection, retirement scams, things of that nature. Do you agree that an office that can't really do its job properly if it's done by a skeleton crew?
Senator, I had laid out one of my priorities in my opening statement, which is to protect Americans from fraud and scam, and that includes older Americans who may be uniquely vulnerable to those scams.
And how can you do that if it's going to be, these offices are going to be gutted and aren't going to have the proper staffing to do that?
Senator, I have an open mind about staffing levels for offices, and my understanding of the state of litigation is that I'll have the opportunity to make those judgments.
Get back.
That concludes the question and answer portion of today's hearing. I'd like to thank our nominees for testifying before the committee today, and thank you for your willingness to serve our country. For senators, all follow-on questions for the record must be submitted by Friday, July 24th at noon. Witnesses, please respond by Friday, July 31st at noon to the written questions you receive in order to facilitate this committee promptly processing these nominations. With that, this hearing is adjourned.